Okay, so made a little bit of progress since the last portion. So basically what I did was, like I said before, I'm not trying to do a show quality anything. I want to do what's right for the car, do the right amount of protection, but also in an efficient amount of time and money that I can actually get it back together and drive it. So I kind of went with this option. So I've had this stuff on the shelf for a while. It's called Rust Reformer. So you can spray it on rust, but I didn't really do that. I spent a little bit more time. So I ended up, Harbor Freight had a sale on the parts cleaner, which of course, if you've ever had a parts cleaner, you know that it costs more to fill the stupid thing than it does to buy the machine itself. But I ended up getting, it's called Oil Eater. This stuff right here from the Home Depots. Because it's biodegradable. I don't have to worry about all the ventilation requirements and all that good stuff. It just takes a little longer to eat the debris and all that stuff, which is fine. So I just let the parts sit in there overnight. So, cleaned them up really well, got them down to, you know, I wouldn't say bare metal, but they were very clean. They had the surface rust on there still. So, I hit them up with the wire brush, scrubbed everything, let them dry, hit them with a couple coats of this rust reformer, and, this is what you're looking at. So, yeah, it's a good finish. Nice matte. I'm sure it will look like garbage as soon as I take it out on the road, but we'll see how long it lasts. So now that I have this, I also ended up removing the front strut mount. So the strut bar here comes out, connects to the lower control arm. I ended up removing that, got the bushings coming for that. I've been having a heck of a time trying to find the right bushings for the sway bar. It's a 3/4 inch sway bar, and everyone from every different manufacturer says that all these different sizes came. So I think I'm on try number 2 now. But once that comes, that we'll be able to fly through that pretty quick. And then the sway bar bushings themselves, same problem. And then the sway bar end links. So this is what came out of it. And this is what everybody swears is the correct one. So you can tell it's a different length. It's a completely different diameter. So still working through that to see what it's going to take to get it through. But now I'm going to actually start putting the bushings in these control arms, get the control arms back in, start making some progress. Then I'll get the coil spring compressor out and do that. But we'll see how it goes to get these bushings in, which this is always my experience, the hardest part. Getting them out is easy because you're not worried about damaging anything or whatever. Getting them back in takes a lot more patience. So we will see how that goes. All right, so if you remember before, we had the ball joint press out to remove all these bushings. That's also the same way you can put it back in. You can use a C-clamp or something like that, but the ball joint press is great for this because it has all these little collars and adapters that can really make it a one-man job. So each one of these control arms has, this this bushing itself is tapered, so it's small on one end and it gets bigger on the other end. So they only go in one way. If you try to put it in the other way, you will frustrate yourself all day long. And, full disclosure, like I did myself about 20 minutes ago, before I realized that I was once again an idiot and there was a bigger hole on one side. So as you get these things set up properly, once again, just a normal box end wrench, good shop practices, um, and you will draw this collar in until it's flush. And once it's in there, you're done. Now you can put the control arm back in, put the ball joint in, all that good stuff. But this right here, if you do this wrong, especially if you bust out the hydraulic bottle jack press, you can bend these things real quick. And then you'll end up having to do an upgrade, which I don't want to do. So just food for thought. All right, so this one's all pressed in. You can also see one of the reasons that I, didn't want to get a perfect paint job is because you always end up, scuffing a little bit here and there. And, when you don't do the super expensive coatings, you don't feel as bad when you can do a little touch up. So you get it in the car, get all your adjustments done, and then you can tape off whatever you need to and spray a little bit if you want. But by then, honestly, you kind of forget about it and it looks fine. So these guys will go in here. And then this guy goes in from underneath. Of course, trying to do it one hand is awesome. Knew that was happening a split second before it did. So it gets bolted in just like that, and then pivots up and down with the car. So easy day. Now I can move on to the fun one, which will be the double-sided. All right, so if you remember this is the one that we had to burn out. So not terribly unlike a U-joint. This guy is going to go in, and this is your pivot point. This gets bolted to the frame of the car. This piece is the one that's allowed to articulate. So these bushings are going to get pressed in to their individual slots and then over this piece to allow for that as well. And then they get bolted here. So this is, you're going to start one, start the other, and then you'll have them both in. And you can, if you have a big enough contraption, you can do both at the same time, or you can get a little creative and do one side, as long as you keep this both ends inside. So solid 20% chance of it working the first time for me. So we'll figure that out. One of the things to this day that still can get me is, being patient and, not getting frustrated when things are seemingly not going your way. So here's a little trick I've learned. Hopefully you can see it. So if you're wrenching on these things and you're like, man, I just don't think the bushing is going in, take a flathead screwdriver or something, make a little scribe, right, on the bushing. And then as you're going in, you'll watch that bushing disappear. And then that's the way you can be like, yep, my alignment's great. I'm going in. Everything's working out. Then you can take a chill pill and, move on with life. But as you can see with the socket, sometimes, the stuff that's in these kits just doesn't work for your application. You got to figure it out. So, but that right there, that's a great trip I learned a long time ago to make sure that the bushing is going in. Now you should be able to see with this bushing pressed in all the way, you should be able to see that this is kind of what I was talking about, is this one doesn't have anything in it yet. So you're going to slide this guy in the right spot, and this one gets held in with a bolt. It's got the flat washer here, but this is done after it's in the car. I'll probably thread the bolt in there just to keep this from jumping around. But now you have to press the bushing in and make sure it stays inserted the whole time. So this, you won't be able to do the clamp style on this side like you were here. So you got to get a little creative. So we'll see what I come up with. So here's what it's going to take. So went ahead and threaded the bolt and the washer down in there just to keep this thing from jumping up and down. But there's no real way to clamp it, right? So if you had a vise big enough or something like that, you could probably do the whole both ends, but I'm not going to bother with that, mainly because I don't have one. So instead, I'm just going to put a socket on the end of this one, and I'm going to, hit it down there. On the Bushkadush scale, I'll probably use like a 2, because once again, the weight of the hammer is going to do its job. And if you're hitting it super hard and it's not going in, that means you have an alignment problem or something like that. And you need to, again, take that old chill pill. But we'll see how this goes. It'll probably take, 30 or 40, of the 2s on the Bushkadush taps to get her in. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so this is what it looks like it's going to end up being. So kept this part bolted to keep this whole control arm from moving, because with this in the vise, the whole control arm wants to move this. So scribed all the way around, started with the socket, getting it in slowly. So now that it's started most of the way, now I can start increasing the force of the hammer blow and get it all the way in, because it's going to take a good amount of force. So we'll do this till we're seated, and then this piece will be ready to go back in the car. All right, so I have achieved victory with the lower control arm and the upper control arm. So both bushings are installed. I also went ahead and threw in the ball joint, so that one's pretty easy. They don't include any instructions, of course, but you just drop it in. 3 nuts, 3 bolts. Got the lower ready with this ball joint as well. This one is a little bit more of a pain, but you bolt it in from 2 sides. They include 2 different sizes of bolts for both. I don't know. I don't understand. They gave me 2 different sizes, meaning they sent 2 total, 1 long, 1 short, even though dimensionally they both needed to be exactly the same. But all the thread engagement is good. And of course, everything that you should get for suspension should be greasable, so you should never have to replace these things again. Got the new idler arm ready to go in. new bumper, and then this should be pretty much dry. So in a lot of the places, I just, I knocked the surface rust off, and especially in the bolting areas where things are going to be mounted, I just kind of cleaned everything up. So once everything dries, we should be ready to put everything back in. So I'll throw in the lower ball joint. Should be super easy. It'll slide right up in here, bolt, and it'll just hang for now. And then the upper control arm being here, and again, it'll just hang for now. I'll do the final torques and tightening of everything once everything's in as a unit, so I can get everything greased, adjusted, and done in one shot. And then once all that's done, then we'll set up the tie rods and make sure the alignment's as close as it can get, so I can actually get it to a shop in one piece when this is all said and done. All right, so I got everything loosely installed right now. I just snugged everything up. So upper control arm, lower control arm, new idler arm. You can see the difference between the passenger side that we've been working on and the driver's side, which I haven't even gone to, especially like, see these bushings are just completely blown out. So it's another reason why I leave everything together. So one, you remember how it goes back together, but two, you can just remember how much progress you're actually making. So bump stops in, idler arms temporarily connected, upper and lower control arm. And now, so a couple years ago, I did all the brakes. I did the complete brake system, except for the lines, obviously. So I had, new axle bearings in the back, new hub bearings in the front, and then I put them all together. So, it looks great. I've spent the last 20 minutes fighting with myself because once I saw the backside, I'm going to take all this stuff off. So you can see these, the steering knuckle itself is not going to look good. And now I can't bring myself to just throw it back together because that would be too easy and that would not be right for this car. So everything's going to come off this again. These pieces are going to come off, go in the cleaning tank. I'm going to clean them down really good, paint them, and then we will put all this back together, and then we'll put it on the car. I do hate doing drum brakes though. If you've ever done them, you know. If you've never done them, don't. So the aftermath went ahead and bit the bullet and just went ahead and disassembled everything, which is good because, it's been a couple of years. So it's good to see what my past self did. Putting in things like this, where it looked like that when I just took it out. So, it's probably not going back in. I'm probably going to pick up another one of those. So it's good that I did this. But now I can get this spindle in the dunk tank, get this piece that connects to the tie rod, and it's got the hard stop on it there. And I painted this a couple of years ago. This one still doesn't look too bad. I'm going to blow it off, and I'll probably give it another coat or something. But I know I'm going to have to do this on the other side now. But once again, when it goes back together, I don't want it to come back apart again. I want to be able to drive it, do some adjustments if needed, keep on down the road. So I'll give you a little bit on this parts washer. So as soon as you turn this thing on, it starts flowing through the brush. You can see it's a little dirty right now, but this oil eater is something else because you can see how it's just turning darker and darker just by spraying it on here. And this is a pretty stiff bristled brush, so as you go through, it just gets better and better. So once again, I'm not in a rush, so I'm just going to dunk it in the lower level along with the spindle. Then I'll come out tomorrow, scrub it all, hit it with the wire brush, and then hit it with that the rust converter. And then we'll be back to putting it back together. And I'll probably start with it on the car like you normally see. So spindle first, and then I'll put the backing plate and the drum hardware, all that stuff on the car instead of trying to put it back together between my feet, which is a little more irritating. Okay, not only did I get the spindle put back on, everything cleaned, painted, and the brake drums back on, I pretty much have the passenger side suspension done. So I got the coil spring in last night, the shock in this morning at the top. I don't know where the bolts are for the bottom. I took them out years ago, and now I got to figure out where they're at. So I look forward to that. Yeah, the strut arm's in, the new tie rod, which I used the old one to match up. I didn't hook it in yet because I'm going to take that intermediate the steering shaft out completely. You know, clean that one up, paint it. That way everything matches. But you can just see the difference between what I just finished and the old stuff. You know, those, all the joints I've taken out, as far as the greasable ones, they haven't been bad. The boots are obviously dry rotted as hell, but, and they've got so much grease in it, they all look like softballs, but they all probably could have gone a little while longer, but everything else that's rubber is just completely gone. So, you can see that. And then I also ran into some fun. So I went ahead and I didn't like the way that this control arm felt when I got it back in the car. It wasn't moving as freely as I thought it should. And when I looked at the tech manual, you know, it said specifically this needs to turn by hand before you put it in the car, and it was a little rough. So it bothered me for about a day, so I went ahead and pulled it out. And of course, in doing so, when I pulled out this nut, it fell down the exhaust pipe that used to be right here. Went all the way down there. So I had to pull that out. And when I did, whatever this year is minus 1965, all this stuff came out of the pipe. Now, I'm sure that's in both sides, and I'm sure it's going to just get shot right into that muffler whenever I fire it up the first time. So I'll probably take off the other side and dump it out too. But for that control arm, you know, since I needed to pull it out, I did it by hand with the vise. You know, I'm decent with a hammer, but clearly I didn't do it right. So I went ahead and did something I've been putting off for years, which is I went ahead and got a press. Harbor de Freight had a sale going on, so I went ahead and did it. And I will tell you that when I pulled out the upper control arm first time, between pulling it out and taking the upper bushings out, total work, when I wasn't lighting it on fire, was about 3 to 5 hours. I put this together, pulled out the upper control arm, pressed out both bushings, pressed in both bushings, reinstalled it on the car in 45 minutes. So if you know how to use one of these, super fun, saves a lot of time. And also, if you're looking at one for yourself, don't get a 12-ton. 12 tons is going to be right on that cusp of, oh, I wish I had more. This, you'll never wish that. So for the bushings that I pressed out last night, I didn't even use the bar. I just did a finger, and it was more than enough to push those out. So again, if you know what you're doing, these are the way to go. Just don't put them where I did, where now you're going to have to move it around all the time. But, you know, whatever. Table of parts is getting smaller, so that's the driver's side suspension, one coil spring left, and then it's onto brakes and fuel. I've already got the lines laid out, starting to work on those. So like I said, my goal is to finish underneath. That includes the transmission service before I set it down on all fours. Then I can move it around, get the engine started, or start working on the engine, all that good stuff. So yeah, you can just see it just looks so much better in here. I highly recommend this Rust-Oleum rust reformer because you don't have to paint anything over the top of it, but it is extraordinarily durable because I had to do a lot of beating on that lower control arm last night with some pry bar to get the spring in, and I'll tell you, it didn't even leave a mark. So on we go.